In the quiet hours of a cold Tuesday morning in Atlanta, a hardworking black single father named Marcus walked through the doors of the warehouse where he had given 5 years of his life. He never expected those doors to close on him forever that same day. With 2 young kids waiting at home and rent due at the end of the week, Marcus poured everything he had into every shift. Then, without a single warning, without a chance to explain, his manager looked him in the eye and said the words that shattered his world, "You're done. Clean out your locker." If this story touches your heart the way it touched ours, please subscribe to Whispers of Heart 0.2, hit that like button, and leave a comment telling us what kindness means to you. Your support keeps these stories alive. Marcus stood frozen in that fluorescent-lit office, the paper in his hand trembling. No reason. No review. Just gone. He had always been the first one in and the last one out. He never called in sick. He stayed late when trucks ran behind schedule. He covered shifts for coworkers who needed time with their families. Yet none of that mattered now. The company had decided he was disposable. He drove home in silence, the city lights blurring through the windshield. His 8-year-old son, Jordan, and his 5-year-old daughter, Maya, ran to the door the moment he stepped inside. "Daddy, did you bring the pizza?" Maya asked, her little voice full of hope. Marcus forced a smile and pulled them both into a long hug so they wouldn't see the fear in his eyes. That night he sat at the kitchen table after the kids were asleep, staring at the unpaid bills and the empty space where his next paycheck should have been. The days that followed were hard. He applied for jobs online until his eyes burned. He stood in line at the unemployment office. He sold his old tools just to buy groceries. Pride fought with necessity every hour. Still, Marcus refused to let bitterness take root. He remembered something his late mother used to say, "Son, the only thing that can break a man is when he stops being kind." One rainy afternoon, while walking home from yet another rejected interview, Marcus saw an elderly woman struggling with a flat tire on the side of the road. Her car was old, the jack was stubborn, and the rain was coming down harder by the minute. Most people drove past. Marcus stopped. He had almost nothing left, no job, no savings, wet clothes, and a phone that was almost out of battery, but he still had 2 strong hands and a heart that refused to look away. He changed the tire. He made sure the spare was secure. He even walked her to the nearest gas station so she could call her daughter. The woman, Mrs. Eleanor Whitfield, kept thanking him through tears. "You didn't have to stop," she said. Marcus just smiled and answered, "Somebody stopped for me once when I needed it. I'm just passing it on." What Marcus didn't know was that Mrs. Whitfield's daughter was a senior investigative reporter for a national news network. That evening, over dinner, Eleanor told her daughter about the quiet, exhausted man who had helped her in the rain without asking for a single thing in return. She described the way his hands shook slightly when he tightened the lug nuts, the way he mentioned his kids with such gentle pride, and the way he never once complained about his own troubles. The daughter, Rebecca, felt something stir. She made one phone call that night, to a trusted source inside the same company that had fired Marcus. What began as a simple check turned into a full investigation. Within days, documents surfaced. Emails. Internal memos. Proof that the company had been systematically firing long-term black employees under false pretenses to avoid paying benefits and to cut costs before a major merger. Marcus's case was not unique. It was part of a calculated pattern. Rebecca's story broke on national television 2 weeks later. The company tried to deny everything. Then the calls started pouring in, former employees, current workers, even a few mid-level managers who could no longer stay silent. Stock prices dropped. Contracts were canceled. Federal investigators opened a formal inquiry. Within a month the CEO resigned, the board was replaced, and the company that had treated people like numbers was forced into a massive settlement and restructuring that nearly took it under. Marcus learned the truth the same way most people did, watching the evening news with his children on either side of him. When Rebecca's face appeared on the screen and she spoke his name, he felt the air leave his lungs. The next morning his phone rang. It was the new interim leadership offering him his job back with full back pay, an apology, and a promotion. More importantly, they asked if he would help them rebuild the company's culture from the inside. Marcus accepted, but only on one condition: every employee who had been wronged would receive the same chance. He returned not as a man seeking revenge, but as a man who still believed kindness could outlast cruelty. Months later, on a quiet Sunday, Marcus drove past the same stretch of road where he had changed Mrs. Whitfield's tire. The sun was shining this time. He pulled over, stepped out, and simply stood there for a moment. He thought about how close he had come to giving up, how easy it would have been to walk past that woman and keep his own pain to himself. Instead, one small act, one ordinary moment of choosing another person over his own exhaustion, had set an entire chain of justice in motion. Jordan and Maya still talk about the day their father came home smiling again. They don't understand every detail of corporate investigations or stock markets, but they understand this: when Daddy had almost nothing left, he still gave what he could. And somehow that was enough to change everything. Kindness does not always make headlines. Most of the time it is quiet, unnoticed, and offered when no one is watching. Yet every now and then, one simple act becomes the first domino in a line that no one expected to fall. Marcus never set out to take down a company. He only set out to help a stranger on a rainy afternoon. The rest followed because the universe has a way of answering when we choose compassion over self-protection. If you are reading this or listening right now and life feels heavy, remember Marcus standing in the rain with wet sleeves and an empty wallet. Remember that the smallest kindness you offer today might be the one call that changes someone else's tomorrow. You do not need power or position or perfect timing. You only need the courage to stop when others keep driving. Spread that courage. Hold the door. Listen a little longer. Share what little you have. Because somewhere out there, another single parent is walking home under gray skies, and the only thing standing between despair and hope might be the moment you decide to be kind.